Hey everybody, what's going on? I'd like to welcome you all to another episode of the Saturdays in Stores podcast brought to you right here on the Crossover Media Network. My name is Kanaye Tesoro, and there's a lot to talk about on today's episode. A lot going on in the world of Husky basketball since last week's episode. UConn getting 2 games under their belt. Since then, playing one against Providence at home at Gamble, and then one on the road at Finneran Pavilion against Villanova. So 1 win, 1 loss. Definitely a lot to take away from these games. Some good, a lot of bad. Definitely some things that this team's going to have to improve on. But yeah, I'm just going to be breaking down some of those games, what I was able to take away, and just maybe just a really brief preview going into the Georgetown game, which is slated for this Saturday. But before we get into that, if you like this podcast, if you like any of the content you see on this channel, please review, subscribe, tell other people about it. It all helps with the algorithm on YouTube. And of course, please put any of your takes in the comments below. All of us here at the Crossover Media Network, we love seeing what you guys have to say about what we're saying and some of your own personal takes, whether it's about college, NBA, or anything we're covering. So let's get into it. First game, of course, against Providence. They played on Sunday at Gamble Pavilion. UConn took home an 87-84 win and avoided what would have been a really bad quad 3 loss. I believe it would have been had UConn ended up losing this game. A little bit concerning when you consider the fact that UConn opened as 15-point favorites at home in this ball game against Providence. This is a Providence program that's really dealt with terrible injury luck over the past few years, specifically with Bryce Hopkins. Last year, they lost him when they were rolling early in the season to the ACL tear, and he's seen limited action this year, only playing 3 games. And I mean, he's been good when he's played, but he hasn't been available for Providence. But yeah, I mean, Jaden Pierre, really good player, and he showed up against UConn. I mean, he played really well. He scored 24 in this game. I mean, I kind of expected that. I just think, I talked about in last week's episode how Providence likes to go one-on-one a lot, and that's what they did. They knew that UConn didn't have great one-on-one defenders, and that's what they took advantage of. They went to the hoop. They, took advantage of mismatches, and they exploited a lot of UConn's defensive weaknesses in their isolation defense in that first half. And if I'm being honest, I think in the last 2-3 years, whatever you want to call this era of the run that UConn basketball has gone on, where they've looked so dominant, or they've at least been in national championship contention. This is probably that first half against Providence was probably the worst basketball I think I've seen this UConn program play in this specific time frame under Dan Hurley. And yeah, I mean, it was just really concerning. Of course, they turned around the second half. They, locked in defensively. I think the move of playing Terrace Reed a lot more down the stretch compared to Samson Johnson helped. But I mean, this team needs to improve defensively because Providence, they have solid players. I mean, Jaden Pierre is a good player. Wesley Cardette, when he's on, he's a solid player. But I mean, Bryce Hopkins wasn't playing, and there's going to be teams out there that are a lot better going in isolation than Providence is, and you got to improve because this isn't going to fly against Marquette. It's not going to fly against Creighton nor St. John's or any other top teams in this league. I mean, you saw at the time of this recording last night against Villanova. Eric Dixon did have a great game, but there's times where Wooga Poplar got favorable matchups and was able to go one-on-one, and that's just something. Again, that's the theme for this season. There just needs to be continued improvement defensively from the perimeter. Just in terms of the perimeter defense, the guards need to improve. Solo ball, Hassan Diar is the best defender on this team in terms of on-ball defense. But yeah, solo ball, Mahaney, Jaylin Stewart, Jaden Ross, they all need to. Liam McNeely, when he comes back, they all have to continue to improve defensively playing on the perimeter because they can't let this continue to happen. But yeah, let's talk a little bit about or I guess just to, the defense was bad in that first half against Providence. They need to improve. And just something I didn't really understand was even early into the second half, when the lead for Providence bloomed up to 14 points, I want to say it was, Samson Johnson was in the game, and I just didn't understand why it took so long for Hurley to realize that, hey, it's probably a good idea to make the switch to Terrace Reed in this ball game. just because Providence was manhandling UConn and on the glass at points of the game. I mean, they out rebounded UConn in this basketball game, which was, I think, a little unexpected going in. I think most people would have expected UConn to out rebound Providence, but they were getting killed inside, and they didn't have the rim protection, they didn't have the rebounding, and Providence was just being more physical. And this was a tough, classic Big East basketball game. And I think Terrace Reed, I love Samson Johnson. I love everything he's done for this program. There's no UConn fan. Well, I don't know. There probably are UConn fans out there that are going to say some bad stuff about it. But a real UConn fan won't have a bad thing to say about Samson Johnson, like genuine bad thing to say. But I mean, Terrace Reed is just better suited for this type of matchup in the way the game was going, where it was very physical. The rebounding game was crucial to who was going to win, and they needed improved rim protection. And once Terrace Reed came in, it shifted everything. That you could feel the momentum change towards UConn. Just what he was able to do, not only defensively, but just some of his takes in the basket, in the post, what he was able to do. I mean, it was very reminiscent of Adama Sanogo. And again, I've talked about it. I mean, I think that is the vision this coaching staff has for Terrace Reed down the road. Again, he might not get to that point this year, but next year, I don't see why Terrace Reed can't be a dominant post presence or someone you can throw the ball to in the post and trust that he can go and get you 2 points or get fouled the way Adama Sanogo was 2 years back in that first national championship run of the two. But yeah, Terrace Reed in this game off the bench. 18 minutes, 10 points, 3 blocks, 5 rebounds, 2 assists. He played great. He did really, really good. 3 turnovers, which is a little concerning. Of course, that was a good something I worried about and other people worried about with Terrace Reed coming in, just based off his Michigan highlight tape. He tends to have trouble processing the game at certain points and making the wrong reads or making bad decisions. And he's definitely improved from what we've seen um, from his playing time at Michigan to what he's done this year. But he does tend to have quiet games here and there. And then he does tend to have dominant performances like we saw in that game against Memphis or the Xavier game, where he's a dominant low post presence that can go and get you a bucket in the post at any time. But yeah, I mean, Terrace Reed, again, they needed the physicality that Terrace Reed can bring, and he brought it, and that was crucial for turning the tide in this ball game. Hassan Diar was amazing in this game. This arguably was the best game of Hassan Diar's career in a Husky uniform. I think. I personally think it might have been just the shot making ability that he showed, which he hasn't necessarily really shown at all this season or throughout his career. He's not one to really go out and seek his own shots or seek his own score on his own. But when they needed him to, he was able to. Like he hit like 1 or 2 step back threes in this game, or just one. He went 1 for 2 from three. But that fadeaway from the corner, I think at after the game, he said Kobe and threw up a prayer and it went in. And I mean, hey, that shot was amazing. I mean, I couldn't believe it went in, but that was yeah. Hassan was great. He balled this game again. He's done a great job as a facilitator. 8 assists in this game. I think I saw a stat over his. I think ever since Maui, he hasn't had under 7 assists in a ball game. If that's true, then I mean, wow. Hassan's really stepped it up, and I think he's really completely transformed the narrative around the point guard problem that UConn had at the beginning of the year, and specifically the talks going into the season. So yeah, Hassan Diar just great. I mean, he's really 19 points in this game, 3 steals, 8 assists. Was able to get to the line, hit 10 free throws, 10 of 11 from the line. Just really great stuff from Hassan. And I've talked about it in past episodes. It's just really cool to see the growth of players year to year. I mean, 2 years ago, he's a guy that saw limited minutes here and there, just a guy who came off the bench once in a while, could give you minutes that other guys could, Jordan Hawkins, Tristan Newton, Calcaterra, Jackson Jr., those guys could get a little bit of a break, and Naheem Aline maybe. And last year he was Big East Sixth Man of the Year, and now he's the starting point guard, and he's done really, really well. And he's top 5 in the country in assists per game, I believe, last time I checked. And he's what he brings as a defender, the best perimeter defender this team has, and he's like a floor general out there, and he's done such a great job stepping up into this role. And I think it's been great to see, and I'm really happy for Son to see the growth year to year. But yeah, I think the other biggest storyline coming out of this game was Aidan Mahaney finally got things going. I know I talked about it last episode how I'm still a believer in Mahaney. I understand he didn't have a good game against Villanova, 0 points in that game. But I mean, I think Dan Hurley in his post-game press conference after the Providence game, he came out and said that he screwed up at the beginning of the year where he should have had Hassan start at the point and not force Aidan to do something that he wasn't necessarily comfortable doing or something he wasn't familiar with doing. What have I been saying ever since the start? Aidan Mahaney didn't play the point at St. Mary's. He's a natural combo guard who plays the two. He's an undersized combo guard, but he never was in a role at St. Mary's where he had to do any facilitating or really true processing of what he's getting from the defense based off the sets that St. Mary's ran. He played with guys like Logan Johnson, Augustus Marshallonis, Alex Dukas, guys that are really capable passers that were able to take that burden off of Mahaney. And Mahaney didn't necessarily have to be an on-ball guard. He could go out with a scoring mindset and mentality, just go out and again, I understand he wasn't very efficient at St. Mary's, but he was able to, I think, do a fairly admirable job in the role he was tasked with, and just kind of being the only creator on that team in terms of being able to go and get a basket himself. But again, I talked about the URI exhibition game where he didn't really play the point. He came off the bench, was kind of the two out there when he played. He scored 17 points and shot the ball well. He played off the ball for the most part in this game against Providence, and he was able to score. I mean, 15 points, 2 for 2 from three, got to the line in the late stretches. I understand that was because Providence was in a position where they had to foul to try to extend the game as much as they could to try and come back in the late stretches. But yeah, I mean, 0 assists in this game. But if he's playing off the ball and he's scoring, then I think that's what you look for Mahaney to do. But yeah, he played a lot better defensively in this game. Um, he showcased the shot creating ability, specifically when UConn was down. I want to say it was 68-64, and they gave the ball to Mahaney with 5 seconds left on the clock, and he's able to get to the rim and go up with the left hand and finish. And I mean, he showcased the ability that he's able to create his own shot and get a bucket when they kind of need him to. And I think, I mean, this is the role Mahaney should have been in the entire season. He's not a point guard. Yes, he is undersized playing out of the two spot. He's not a good defender by any means. And I don't think he's ever going to be a good defender. But if he can fight on defense, at least not make himself a complete defensive liability, and just do what he did at St. Mary's, where he's in the mindset, I'm here to score. I'm here to go and get a bucket. I can shoot. He can shoot the ball, and he's able to attack closeouts, and he does his handle isn't the greatest, but he's got a good enough handle to be able to search for his own shot and be able to hit them at times. And I think that's what he needs to do. They need someone to emerge off the bench, whether it's him, Jaylin Stewart, which we saw in this Villanova game, or Jaylin Stewart, and then Jaden Ross. They need those guys to emerge, especially with Liam being out. I mean, it's evident how much this team misses Liam right now. Just without having a secondary creator with, I understand Hassan, Hassan is a guy that you want with the ball in his hands, but he's not a guy that's going to seek his own shot, like I just mentioned a little bit ago. And he's not a guy who's actively seeking to score. William McNeely can go and create his own shot, and he's able to get to the rack. He's able to go to the rack. He's able to finish, and he showcased that ability, which I think is really surprising for someone his size playing at the wing, especially as a freshman too. But yeah, it's clear they're missing Liam McNeely a lot. Not having that kind of sort of Cam Spencer second mediator type of guy who's kind of the second in line with the ball in their hands that you're running offense through. And I mean, Mahaney was kind of that guy in this game against Providence, and they didn't really have that in the Villanova game. And yeah, I mean, I'm going to get into that in just a little bit, but yeah, I mean, it was really, I think it was really good to see, and I think Aidan needed to have a game like that where he could show UConn fans and his teammates that they should continue to trust the process with him. And I think he's going to get to that point this year. where he starts to trend a little bit back towards that player we were advertised that we were getting originally in the portal. Again, not everyone, including myself, was super high on the Mahaney signing when it happened. I know others were really high on it. Um, some people thought it was going to be first team All American, but I did not see that a world where that was going to happen this year. And I mean, hey, he's probably seen other guys that UConn didn't take over Mahaney, like Kobe Brea, who is the best 3-point shooter in the country right now, has been lighting it up at Kentucky. And I think it's probably gotten to him a little. I mean, I'm sure he sees what the media says. I'm sure he's seen what UConn fans have had to say at points. But I think it's definitely nice to see that he hasn't let it completely get to him. He's able to go out and have a game like he did against Providence when they need him to. But yeah. So let's talk about this Villanova game now. Definitely a game that they should have won when you consider the fact that it was a matchup between Dan Hurley and Kyle Neptune. I don't think it's necessarily that bad of a loss, and that wasn't a slight to Kyle Neptune, but just if we're being honest, I don't think Villanova has had the success in recent years that anyone would have expected them to. I think a lot of people would have thought Villanova would be a lot better the past few seasons than what they have been. But hey, I mean, it looked really rough in the early stretch of this year, and I did not know if Kyle Neptune was going to make it into the new year as head coach there, but he's kind of turned it around. And hey, they're 4-1 in Big East play right now. They just won against number 9 UConn, and they're building together a resume. And I think Villanova has a chance to make the tournament this year. They have the leading scorer in all of college basketball, Eric Dixon, fifth-year senior, I believe. Um, who's, I mean, yeah, you knew the talent was there last year. He was by far their best player last season. This year, I think, I talked about in the Big East preview I did for the Crossover U podcast, where I was really hoping that Eric Dixon was kind of going to go out strong, being the last member from that Final Four team with Colin Gillespie all those years back, and kind of being the last remaining guy from that era of Villanova basketball with Jay Wright. Um, yeah, so I mean, Eric Dixon, I understand some people don't like him because of they refer to him as a free throw merchant, which I don't necessarily think is the full story. Yeah, maybe he does seek out fouls a lot of the time, but I just think he's such a unique archetype for a player that a lot of teams just don't really know how to defend Eric Dixon, and they don't necessarily have a player that they can throw on Eric Dixon and be fully confident they can guard him. I mean, again, going into the game last night, I had no idea how UConn was going to defend Eric Dixon. I have to say, I think UConn did an admirable job aside from the fouling on Eric. But because I mean, he was fairly inefficient, 6 for 20 from the floor. I'm looking at it as we speak, 2 for 8 from three. Again, he got to the line, shot 9 free throws, made all 9, but 23 points for him. But I mean, I think it's just it comes back to the perimeter defense. I think before the game, you hear that Eric Dixon shoots 6 for 20 on inefficient shooting. I think most people would assume UConn wins this game, but that didn't happen. And I just think it comes down to the defense they play on the perimeter. It has to be better. Wooga Poplar posed a lot of problems on. Like I mentioned earlier, he took advantage of mismatches last night. He scored an isolation play. He was able to hit shots from three. And Jordan Longino, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I mean, he had a good game too from three. He played really well. Villanova got nothing from their bench. It was just their stars that played really well. I don't understand Wooga Poplar's been up and down this year, but as of late, he's played really well. Being a Miami transfer, that's fairly familiar with this UConn program because having played UConn 2 years back in the Final Four, back in that UConn team with Jordan Hawkins, Adam Sanogo, Andre Jackson. And so, yeah, he's familiar with Hurley. He's familiar with UConn. He's played this program before. And I just think he took advantage of his past experiences playing against UConn, and he lit UConn up last night. But I mean, at the end of the day, this is the 7th rated offense on KenPom. Their defense is somehow worse than UConn's on KenPom. That's tough to do, but I think to hold them to only 68 points is a fairly encouraging sign. I mean, I understand they were bad at certain points in terms of isolation defense, but I mean, holding the 7th best offense in the country is 68 points. It's a pretty solid outing in my eyes. But again, there's points where they need to improve defensively and with the fouling. They're disciplined. They need to stop fouling. That continues to be a problem with this UConn team. And it's going to continue to be if they don't figure it out soon because they need to because Big East play is really kicking into high gear now, and they need to understand they're not going to have Liam McNeely till probably the end of January, if that. He might not come back till February, but they need to figure it out with what they have. Hassan Diarra, there's not too much more that you can ask from him. He scored 11 in this game, 9 assists. He had a steal, 4 for 5 from the floor. He played really well in this game. Again, Hassan Diarra, he's like a general out there, really the leader, really comfortable with the ball in his hands, and he played well. He's been playing really well, like I mentioned. He's really completely changed the narrative around this UConn point guard problem. Solo ball in this game really well, played really well too. I forgot to mention how he hit some really big shots in that Providence game. I mean, yeah, his shot making ability in Villanova against Villanova really kept UConn in this game at certain points. I mean, he was able to get, there's one possession where he was on the wing, was able to get the Villanova defender up with a head fake and move to his side, hit a big three, hit another big three in the corner later in the late stretches of the game. So, yeah, solo ball's been just a joy to watch this year. It's really cool to see the growth in players to stay with the program. I know so many people, including me, have talked about the hopeful Jordan Hawkins like freshman to sophomore league. And solo ball does at times really seem reminiscent of Jordan Hawkins and his ability to knock down threes within a short time span of each other and really just like be kind of like a microwave scorer and just kick things into high gear and hit tough shots, hit these threes. And he's shooting really efficiently from three this year. And again, he needs to improve defensively for sure. But he had 4 assists in this game. That's encouraging to see. Because that's a guy who's really not doing much out there other than scoring. So if he can improve and continue to do that, facilitating the ball, getting other guys in positions to score, then that's going to take this team to a whole new level, at a completely new dimension. For him at the off guard spot, being a little bit of be kind of like a combo guard where he's not only out there scoring, but he can set guys up. He can be a facilitator, or even play the point when Hassan goes to the bench, so Mahaney can come in and play off ball. That would be really great, and I hope solo ball continues to show that he can dish out some assists here and there. But yeah, Jaylin Stewart in this game, very very encouraging to see him ball. He got the start in this game. Jaden Ross got the start against Providence. Didn't play particularly well against Providence, but Jaylin Stewart played today, and he played really well. Specifically in that first half, he had 10 points fairly quick. Shot 6 or 9 this game, 2 for 5 from 3. He added 2 assists, 3 boards, 2 blocks as well. But I think Jaylin Stewart, again, just showed everyone that he has the offensive skill set to be an NBA prospect. And I legitimately think Jaylin Stewart is going to be an NBA player one day. But yeah, he played really well in this game. Again, there's points where he doesn't make the right read or he makes an inadvertent pass. And sometimes he's not fully there on the defensive side of the ball. But he is a player that needs to continue to grow. And I think seeing him being able to ball and just go out and score and showcase how skilled he is on the offensive side of the ball, it's really nice to see. And I think they're going to need him to continue to score the way he did yesterday, with Liam being out for an extended period of time. So I hope Jaylin Stewart continues to shoot, continue to get shots up, just keep playing hard. If you keep playing hard, then everything's going to fall through eventually. You play good defense, it's going to set you up on the offensive side. So just a continued growth from Jaylin Stewart. That's all you can really ask for. Jaden Ross, again, you want him to emerge as that 20-minute a game 3D guy who's comfortable knocking down 3-pointers when he's got the looks, and he can go out and guard the other team's best perimeter offensive player. And again, Mahaney, 0 points in this game. You need Mahaney to step up. He showed UConn fans what he's able to do in that game against Providence. And if he's going to continue to play off the ball, like Dan Hurley said, he should have had Mahaney do the whole time going forward. Then I think you look for Mahaney to you need to let Mahaney play and figure it out. I understand you need to win these games, but you need to get Mahaney going because he has to be. They don't have anyone off the bench right now who's really scoring. They're not. I don't think this team necessarily has the depth that I and other people expected them to going into the year, and they need someone to emerge. Whether it's Stewart, Ross, or Mahaney, they need all three of those guys legitimately. If we're being honest, to emerge as guys who are capable contributors off the bench, specifically Mahaney, because that's what he was advertised to be, a guy who can go out and create his own shot and get you a bucket when you need him to, which was kind of a problem in the final several out of balance possessions of this ball game where UConn caught a few breaks, specifically with that block at the end that they called the foul on Alex Caravan. I'm going to touch on that very soon, but they were run. They seemed to be getting nothing out of those sets, and they had one where they have Hassan go into the hoop, which I like Hassan. He's a fairly capable finisher. He does a pretty good job going into the lane and finishing through contact. But then they had another one where they have Alex Caravan kind of trying to put up a floater, and it just seemed a little off. Just some of the sets they ran, some of the actions. They need. That's a thing I think this team lacks. They don't have a guy who's a creator with the ball. Alex Caravan, very good player, but that's not his archetype. He's not the type of guy who's going to go out and seek his own shot off the dribble, really, other than like a quick movement shot from three, which is a really quick. Just there's plays drawn up where the shot clock's running low when they're taking it out of bounds with like 3 or 4 seconds left. I think there was a point in the game where that happened where they're running Alex Caravan. They're looking for Alex Caravan to get a shot, but the shot he gets is off movement. And I've talked about how the jump shot is a little unconventional. I mean, it works for him and it goes in a fair amount of the time. So, that's good. But I think just with him having to move uh, to the right as he's shooting, just with the form of his shot, I just think you'd rather draw it up for someone with more of a conventional shot, like a solo ball or Stewart, Sandiara. That's something I tend to notice at times that UConn runs these strange sets where they have Alex Caravan taking these weird off balance shots, which I understand he has gotten a lot better as a movement shooter, but just with his shot that's a little different than most people's normal jump shots. I think you try to look to get him in a position where he's able to set his feet better and put himself in a better position to get a better looking shot off. But yeah, going back, they don't really have guys who could create and go get their own shots. Tristan Newton was kind of that guy last year. Cam Spencer was able to do that. I understand Cam Spencer's handle wasn't the greatest, but he was still pretty good. I mean, we saw all the fadeaways he hit last year, all those tough step back mid range shots he could hit. Steph Castle is really good going to the basket, just because of the physicality he brought, the maturity, even being a freshman, just the physical maturity he had. But yeah, this is the team I think this UConn program lacks this year. I believe that's why they went and got Mahaney. I think that's who they wanted to kind of be the guy to do that this year. But he's fallen out of the starting lineup and he's kind of seeing limited minutes now. I think he's going to hopefully continue to see some more minutes so he could try to figure things out. But we saw in that Providence game how he was kind of able to kind of go out and get his own shot. Again, two of his made baskets were 3-pointers that he caught in rhythm. But that layup to beat the shot clock or that floater where he drove in from the corner, I think he's capable of being a guy who can go out and seek out his own shot and be able to hit a shot off the dribble. And I think, granted, it's the last possession. You're probably trying to put up the last possession of the game. I think why not put Mahaney out there to try and go get his own shot? That's probably the best guy to do it because I would say solo ball, but I think with the way he'd been shooting the ball in the game, Villanova was just going to lock. Yeah, they were really locked in on guarding solo ball and preventing any potential open shot or good look that Solo could get with how well he's been shooting this year and how well he shot in that game. But I mean, yeah, I don't understand why not put Mahaney out there. That's a guy who I think is probably your best bet of a guy who can go out and put himself in the position to get the best shot possible off the dribble based off of whatever he can create or read get from the defense. And hey, if he scores, Villanova's going to take a timeout. Just sub him out. Put someone else in if you're worried about the defense. But yeah, to talk about Caravan a little bit, I know it's a really big story. Him getting fouled when it was a debatable call. I'm still undecided as of right now whether I believe that was a true foul or not. Um, but hey, UConn got the call, sent Caravan to the line with the chance to win the game. Two free throws. They were only down one. If he makes both, UConn probably wins this ball game. He misses both. First time in his collegiate career he missed consecutive free throws back to back. Um, but hey, it's a tough break. It's basketball. It happens. I think Dan Hurley had a great quote about the end in his post game presser where you're gonna have bad moments and you just got to live with it. And he said Alex Caravan's first 2 years of college were like a fairy tale, and you need reality checks at some point. And Alex Caravan got a little bit of a reality check last night, and Dan Hurley also had the follow up quote where he said if he's still feeling bad about it, he can go and play with his two national championship rings. And I mean, I think that's a that's no better way to put it. Might as well. He needs to remember that he was a starter on back to back national championship teams. He's a guy that's hit some of the most clutch 3-pointers. I mean, countless 3-pointers that just seem like daggers. Not only last year, but at points in the year 2 years ago too. But it's just there's so many big shots he's hit, and this is a guy who worked so hard. He came back to school to improve on the things that he needed to improve on: the defense, the movement, shooting, um, just being able to do a little bit more and being an offensive hub. He's one of the smartest players in college basketball, and I think he's going to end up being a first round pick just with the high floor he brings and the winning the winning mentality. He comes from a winning culture here at UConn, and I mean, hey, everyone's going to have their bad moments. Alex Caravan had a bad moment last night. You just got to keep your head up and get ready for Georgetown. I think it really frustrates me. I've talked about it with Mahaney this year, but for a guy who's done so much for the program over the last 2 years, being a starter, to see some of the things that UConn fans have said online about Alex Caravan is really disheartening. And I mean, like, come on, like, are you serious? Like, this is a guy who's probably going to end up in the Huskies of Honor, a guy who helped bring you back to back national championships, and you have the guts to say, um, you have the heart to say anything bad about him or anything unencouraging. I mean, that's ridiculous. He's the leader of this team this year. He came back to school to chase three, and I mean, hey, he's played really well at an All American level this year. I understand some of the past few games he hasn't been great, but hey, listen, if you're hating on Alex Caravan, stay on that side and don't switch up when he comes back and goes off in this game against Georgetown, because I think Alex Caravan's going to come back hungry, and it's going to give it's going to give him a lot of motivation to show the rest of the country why he came back to UConn and why UConn has a legitimate chance to chase 3 national championships in a row. Um, and they'll be in the conversation for that at the end of this year. So just to give a little bit of a preview for Georgetown, um, they do have some guys who like to go one on one, specifically Malik Mack. He's a really good transfer coming out of Harvard last year. I can't fully remember. I want to say he was Ivy League Player of the Year last year, but really talented guard. Transferred over to Georgetown, has played really well this year. They also returned Jaden Epps, the leading scorer in the Big East last season, and he's definitely a guy who can get hot and hurt UConn. They also have Thomas Sorber, who's played really well this year in the front court. So could pose some matchup problems for Terrace and Sampson. Could definitely get them in foul trouble. But I mean, the UConn needs to get this win. I don't think the Villanova loss was a particularly terrible loss. If they had lost to Providence, that would have been a bad loss. Again, not a game that I think you should have let slip away, but it happens. It was on the road. I think it was the perfect trap game. The way I looked at it going in, and it ended up being a trap game. Villanova took home the win, and UConn just got to take care of things in the games they should win going forward. They need to win a lot of their games because those games against Marquette, St. John's, Creighton, they're not going to be easy. So they need to take care of business on Saturday against Georgetown. Ed Cooley's second year. Not the biggest Ed Cooley fan, but he is a good coach. He is definitely Georgetown is starting to trend in the right direction. They took home a big win against Creighton several weeks back. Double-digit win. I understand Creighton was without Pop Isaacs, and they will be for the rest of this year. But Creighton's still a tough team. McDermott's a great coach. Kalkbrenner, again, had him as a preseason All-American for me. Probably not going to end up being that, but still a really good player. Stephen Ashworth played a lot better in year 2 at Creighton. But yeah, Getting back to Georgetown, UConn can't come out and lay an egg. They need to play hard. They need to play tough, improve defensively. They need to figure things out on the offense. Mahaney, Stewart, Ross, they need to get going. Um, Alex Caravan, I think you look for him to have a big turnaround game and come back strong after um, unfortunately missing both free throws, which would have won the game against Villanova. But yeah, I think this is pretty much going to take care of everything for this episode. Again, if you like the content you see on this channel, please review, subscribe, tell other people about it. And until the next episode, I will see you all next time.